Hi everybody, welcome. Thank you for coming. This is the Lake Bluff School District 65 Board of Education public hearing for October 27, 2015. And this is a little bit different than our board meeting. We have to do this before we begin our regular board meeting. So I know you students are here for some really cool stuff that just bear with us. This will only take us a few minutes to work through this. And then we'll move on to the regular meeting where you guys get to do your piece. So begin the meeting by taking a roll call, please.
Mark Berry.
Present.
Leanne Charlotte, present. Julie Gatchall.
Present.
Richard Hay.
Present.
Bill Hood.
Present.
John Marsden, absent. Susan Ryder.
Present.
Okay, we have 6. We've got a quorum, and we can begin. So we'll go right to our agenda, and item 2 is a statement of purpose of public hearing. And tonight, the purpose of this hearing is to hear comments concerning the intent of the Board of Education of School District Number 65, Lake County, Illinois, to transfer $5,666,151.70 from the educational fund to the operations and maintenance fund of said school district. We will, in a moment, have our business director give a little summary of what we're talking about here. First, give the opportunity, I'm going to lead off with that, give the opportunity for the administration to make comment on summarizing what we're doing and why we're doing this. And that would be Mr. Jacob.
Thank you. This is part of the process to get the money from the working cash bonds that were issued in September into the capital projects fund for improvements to the middle school. The first step was done at the last board meeting in September, where we abated the working cash fund to the education fund. And this was done because, and actually we were just at a law conference recently where they had a case on this exact transfer from working cash to education, and so legally it's been settled as being a proper use of fund transfer and abatement. So that's why we're going through the education fund. So now the money resides in the education fund, and we need to transfer it to the operations and maintenance fund before we can move it into capital projects. So that's what this transfer is for tonight.
So simply put, it allows us to take the money we issued bonds for and put it into account from which we can spend it on the new renovation.
Correct.
Okay. And then once it's we're moving it tonight into O&M?
O&M.
And then there's no other movements beyond that? Or is
Then there's no other board action required to move it into capital projects.
Okay.
I can just do that as a transfer behind the scenes, just an accounting entry.
Okay. Did you guys have any questions or follow-ups on
I'm
that?
just curious about something. That is there actually a different account, or is it an accounting ledger that we're moving? I mean, are we actually pulling money out of an account at a bank and putting it into a different account, or is it just
No,
a ledger?
it's all in the same bank account, but it's in a different fund. So
Just a ledger.
Remember, we levied to different funds too.
Right.
Right. Oh, right. I was
each
just
fund has
curious
its own
whether you had
specific
to-
purpose.
Again, you don't have to keep the funds physically separate. I mean, like.
No, we need to keep the proceeds of the bonds separate for tax purposes, because they were tax free bonds. So the people who purchase these bonds don't pay interest on the taxes. So in order to do that, we need to spend it on construction. So we do segregate it for that purpose, and also so that we don't earn interest on the federal money. Like, we don't earn arbitrage interest, which there's zero danger of in this interest rate environment. But so that is key. It's kept separate, but it's not moving tonight. It still remains in the same bank account.
Same bed.
So the purpose of this meeting is to give the public, the board, administration, a chance to comment or ask questions. So we offer up the opportunity also to anybody in the public who has questions or comments or concerns and would like to address the board about this issue, to please do so now. If nobody would like to, I will continue on, and I think we're ready for adjournment. Has everybody said what they need to say about this issue? We will be voting on it under item 8C later tonight when we'll make it official. This is an adjournment, a hearing just to hear public opinion. But as we move to the regular meeting, we will be voting on it. So if everybody's said what they need to say, I will ask for an adjournment. So may I have a motion to adjourn this public hearing at 7:10 p.m.
So,
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Roll call.
Oh, probably not. No, we don't need to. All in favor? Say aye.
aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned from this public hearing. And then we can move right to our regular Board of Education meeting where, again, kids, bear with me. We've got to go through a couple little things and we'll get right to you guys. So now we're beginning the Lake Bluff School District 65 Board of Education regular meeting for October 27, 2015. And then we need to take a roll call again.
Gives me some extra practice.
Yes.
Okay. Mark Berry.
Present.
Leanne Charlotte, present. Julie Gatschall.
Present.
Richard Haig.
Bill.
Bill Hood.
Present.
John Morrison. Absent. Susan Ryder.
Here.
All right, we're still here. We still have quorum, so we can now begin. And would any of the students this evening like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Any volunteers? Any two of you want to do it together? Okay, I'll start. No problem. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Again, under item 4, we ask for public comment. Is anybody in the audience who would like to address the board? Not seeing any, we'll move on. Offer the board the opportunity to offer up a discussion item for this evening or an agenda item for the future. If there's anybody on the board would like to offer up something for a future agenda, please don't hesitate to do so. If you don't have anything now, please email me or Jean. And moving right along to item 6, recognition. Principal Margaret St. Clair at the LBES is going to introduce several 5th grade students who have done some work interviewing an author recently.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to turn it right over to Buffy Stauffer, who is one of our enrichment coordinators, and she has worked with our 5th grade students, and she's going to tell you a little bit about what they have been working on. And our 2 students can come on up. We'll let Mrs. Stauffer introduce you guys. Come on up.
Thank you for having us. Kennedy Bain and Tally Feingold entered an essay contest this past September to win an opportunity to interview Candace Fleming or Eric Roman, the married author-illustrator duo who have a combined total of over 30 plus published books. Candace and Eric were author and illustrator in residence at the Lake Bluff Elementary School this past September for 3 days. That event was hosted by the Alliance for Excellence, the PTO, and Lake Bluff Elementary School. And these young ladies, excellent essays, garnered the winning spots, and they were able to interview this dynamic duo. We're going to have Kenna speak first a little bit about her experience interviewing Candace Fleming.
Okay, so at first I wasn't so sure about this interview, but then as I started to research Candace Fleming, I knew I had to interview her because I had a personal connection to her work. My great-grandfather was in the Navy and was sent on an unsuccessful mission to find Amelia Earhart. Candace Fleming wrote the book Amelia Lost about the life of Amelia Earhart. During the interview, I was nervous but excited. Candace Fleming turned out to be an incredible person who seemed like my best friend by the end.
And Tally Feingold was able to interview author-illustrator Eric Roman. She's going to talk a little bit about that experience.
We recorded our interviews using GarageBand and began to transcribe them, and now we are attempting to publish them. Here's my introduction. I walked into my new huge school. It was only my second week. I trooped up the 2 long flights of stairs, and on every one of the large white pillars there were flyers. I squinted closer, only to see 2 unfamiliar faces staring back at me. It was not the faces, but the words above them that got me interested in the contest. The poster read, "Calling all 5th graders. Would you like to
get a chance to interview Candace Fleming or Eric Roman. A few days later, I slipped my persuasive essay into the submission box. I was soon informed by Mrs. Soule that I had won. I was finally going to get a chance to interview a famous author and illustrator. I was ecstatic. Nothing like this had ever happened to me before. On the day of the interview, I slipped my lucky elephant into my pocket and headed for the door. I was ready to roll.
Did you bring your lucky elephant today?
Her lucky elephant. You gotta slip your lucky elephant in your pocket before you have to interview a famous illustrator.
I do.
And the girls are happy to answer any questions that you have about their interview or the process they went through in order to actually conduct the interviews. And then now, currently, they are in the process of potentially publishing or attempting to publish the interviews that they did with the authors. So, if you have any questions, they're here for you now.
How about, what was your favorite question and answer in your interview?
So I really liked the question, like, what's your background and stuff, because it's really interesting. So she has a cat, a dog, and a tarantula, and she was the arm wrestling champion of her 4th grade class. And it's really cool. Yeah.
Good.
Do you have a favorite question?
I really liked the question, like, was there anything you wanted to do before you became an illustrator or an author? Like, what did you want to be as a child? And, okay, actually, I just thought of my other one. It's what do you like to do in your free time? And he told me that he kind of did the normal things, but he wished he could tell me that he jumped into a pit of spiders for fun, and he skydived without a parachute. And he told me that the closest he had ever gotten to a jungle experience was when he worked at a zoo, and a baby leopard jumped on his back because he was big.
Thanks.
Thank you for having us.
Very cool.
Thank you very much. Great job, girls.
I would just add that the most enjoyable part for me was getting to read the submissions for those who were interested in interviewing the author, and Tally and Kenna had some really strong convictions about that they want to be writers someday, or just how much reading books means to them, and their submissions for even getting this opportunity were really persuasive, so they were excellent. Also, you may see Kenna a little bit later, as she is going to be superintendent for a day.
For the afternoon.
For the afternoon that she won in a raffle. So she will be perhaps speaking to all of you a little bit later as she takes that role. So
I'm lining up a lot of very important work for that afternoon. I know she can.
Well, we rely
Thank
heavily.
you, girls.
We rely heavily on our superintendent, so you will have a lot to do.
Important job. You might as well stay up because your report is first.
And moms, dads, family, if you want to stick around, you're welcome to. But if you don't want to stick around for this meeting, feel free to take off. Do what you got to do.
thank you for coming.
Thanks, guys.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Margaret Sinclair, principal of LBES, will now do her principal report. If there's anything to add.
For our reports this month, we are going to give an update on our attendance and tardy process, how that is going. We did have letters that we penned as an administrative team that we have ready to go. Currently, we've sent out letters to those who have tardies, 5 or more. I sent out 28 of those letters to students at LBES, so those were sent out last week. And then our absence letters, I had about 12 students who were absent more than the 5 or 6 times. We're working to define, we definitely aren't sending out to those who have been sick or ill for that many days, but working to kind of define in our system what is excused and unexcused and what is vacation and not. So that is kind of the update on that. The tardy letters, I had already contacted a few families prior to sending out the letter and saw really a pretty quick improvement with those couple of families that I contacted individually. The tardy letter that was sent out last week, I really didn't have a response from many about. we're looking at to see if it improves the tardiness. The absence letters, I did hear back from several families that just kind of wanted that defined and to be understood, so it's opened up some good dialogue with them.
How many days of school have we even had?
We have been in school, do you know exactly how many days?
Sorry, I'm going to push
No,
on
from
About 48.
like
we're at about 40 something,
Somewhere around 40.
40
mid
mid 40s, I would say. Yeah.
because the 5 or 6 days, was like sort of the most you'd want to have in a year, right?
It's nine in a year, and we're
Okay.
not meeting the requirements for the law.
Right. Okay.
Correct.
Is this
So-
just tardy for the beginning of school, or is this between classes?
It's not between classes, it's for arriving at school on time. So we don't count tardies in the elementary school for anything but arriving at school on time. And those can range anything from walking in the door 2 minutes late to walking in the door over an hour or two late. Once we hit a certain time in the morning, that's considered a half-day absence. So, but there are some tardies that can be an hour and a half into the school day, which is, can just be something that we really want. We just really want students in the building and want them to be at school when they are able. So, 45 days. I was going to say mid 40s. So,
It's a big number.
Yes, it is.
Those are big numbers for that number of school days.
as well, our goal is to reduce that number.
Yeah.
So, I'm hoping that is what we see, what progression we see over the next couple of months as we start to communicate out.
It's important to note that the regional office, the state, and the federal government all have initiatives this year for attendance. So they're starting to really realize the value of kids being in school. It's hard to educate kids when they're not in school. And it also impacts the other classmates in the classroom. So again, our purpose is to bring recognition to the problem and help parents and get kids to school on time and in school.
And in communicating with families that had questions or were concerned about the letter, that's really just the language that we're using. Our district has made this a focus of an area that we really want to provide support and see improvement. The regional office has been a counsel for us, as well as the state kind of having the same kind of goals. So that's the language that we're using with families.
What are the consequences for the kids themselves when they're tardy?
At the elementary school, it's really just, they get marked tardy and this kind of communication is going home. A lot of times our buses arrive on time at school. So, it is working with the families, working with parents to get students there on time. Unfortunately, I think the side consequence is that they walk into a class that's already begun. They've already had all of those introductions with the teachers, the greeting at the door, the setting the tone for the day, working through the schedule. Sometimes depends on which grade level, but students might be off to a special class by 8:10. So a student comes in, their class isn't there, they have to look at the schedule and see where they are. And so it's just a feeling of not being present. A lot of the outcomes for the day are set right at the beginning of the day. And so the consequence for students is that they feel behind, and the consequence for the other students is that there's an interruption.
Because the teacher definitely has to stop the instruction to get the child set.
Have you given any thought to positive reinforcement for those who are making it consistently on time, or anything? What are other punitive measures for those that are consistently late that we might consider other than a letter?
Well, we have kind of the levels of letters. The next thing that would happen would be they would meet with the building administrator, and then the district level administrator, then the regional office if necessary. I like the idea of positive reinforcement though, and just maybe having at the end of our up through winter break, we could feature or highlight those who have been to school on time and been in attendance. I think are great suggestions that we can talk about at admin team.
Again, it's important to note that when at these different levels meetings, the purpose is to really provide interventions. So we're either talking through maybe the child rides their bike to school and the parents don't know they're late. So sometimes we work out a situation that when they get to school, they call the parents. So the parent knows consistently when they're getting there. And as they move through the different levels of interventions,
we have to document that, because when we refer it to the regional office, we have to say we've done this, this, and this. Short of, I've actually bought alarm clocks for kids because I've had kids that have not had alarm clocks to get to school on time. Again, the purpose is to get kids to school so we can educate them. I think that's the big piece. So, and we're still working through any feedback that you have or that you hear. We really made the guidelines, we really relaxed them this year, because our purpose is not to penalize, our purpose is to get the kids to school. So,
Okay, I'll turn it
thank you,
over.
Margaret.
Thanks. Herb, can we help you?
Speaker's blocking the camera.
Oh. Not
anymore.
We're fine.
Sorry about that.
Okay, thanks. Okay, now Mr. Nate Blackburn for his report.
Thank you. I had similar numbers, keeping in mind, of course, that we're a little bit less than half the size of the elementary school. Margaret and I coordinated and sent the letters on the same day. At the middle school, we had 8 letters that went out for students who were in excess of 5 tardies, and then 2 letters that went out for students who were in excess of 6 days absent, not including any of those days that were marked sick. To respond to your question, Mr. Hood, about incentives at the middle school, we do have an incentive in some respects. There are certainly kids who are really striving for those perfect attendance awards. And certainly it really motivates some. We've had challenges with that as well, though. Students who probably should be homesick because they are sick coming to school because they want to stay in the running for that attendance award, to the extent that I've had difficult conversations on the phone with parents to say, I'm sorry, your child has a fever, they can't be here today. And so it's a balance, of course, to motivate and also to have the more punitive letter that goes home. But certainly when we have sent those letters, I've already seen some dramatic changes in those kids that were kind of arriving consistently late. So those are the middle school numbers. Maybe just one other thing to be aware of and maybe to be excited about. Unlike the elementary school, our students do not come to school in costumes on Halloween. Unlike the middle school, or unlike the elementary school, our teachers do. They have a little contest and little hand clapping and applauding to determine the best costumes. But probably the thing that students are most excited about is that we also announced the musical for this year. This coming Friday, we do that by dressing up as characters from the musical. So if you want to be in the know about this year's musical, follow us on Twitter. I'm not above a shameless plug. We'll take a picture of those teachers that are dressed up in costume, and you'll get a good handle on what this year's musical will be. So that'll go out on Friday, excuse me. Thank you.
Thanks, Nate. So we're not going to have a PTO report, but we will have an Alliance report and Miss Wendy White.
So in the past month, what Alliance has been up to, we've been actually pretty busy from our first meeting where everyone was just kind of getting back into the groove of school and looking at each other a lot, to our second meeting a month later. We are full steam ahead. We've set our grant submission deadline for November 2nd, so we can vote at our November 16th meeting. When I met with the elementary school teachers, them crushed their staff meeting. I heard a lot of good questions and a couple of good ideas for grants, so we're looking forward to hopefully getting some of those in soon. We have our fundraising letter coming out. We're expect to have it in mailboxes by the second week in November. It's at the printer at the moment. So I want to remind everyone that contributions to Alliance are tax deductible and they're eligible for most corporate gift matching programs. So don't forget to do that. And also, I don't know if most people know this, but for every dollar that you give to Alliance, about 95 cents of that goes into the grants that we fund for the teachers and administrators. So our operating costs are super low. We're a super efficient way to give to the schools, and we love to do it. So, yeah. Our November 16th meeting, we're also looking forward to having Dr. Sophie and Nate Blackmer at a meeting to go over the middle school plans. And we're really looking forward to the December 16th unveiling of the Mosaic project at the elementary school. So I can't wait to see that. I've heard a lot about it, so we're excited for that. I think that's about it.
Thank you.
Do you guys have there's an opportunity for a shameless plug? Is there a website where people can make donations at?
We have a website, www.lv65alliance.org.
Great.
So yeah, you can just donate via PayPal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we move to item E. Mr. J. Khan, do you have a report for us today?
I was just going to update you on the financial audit. We received an extension. The audit is typically due on October 15th, but we were awaiting some reports on our pension obligations, and those are in, so they're finishing up the audit, and we'll be presenting it at the November board meeting,
November 17th.
November 17th.
And that's, you get the extension from the state?
Yeah, you apply to the state for an extension, correct.
That's it? All right, thanks. Dr. Rubenstein, is there a report for no report for the Director of Student Services, Technology and Assessments? Thank you. President's report, I got a couple of odds and ends to touch on. First thing I want to do is a big thank you to what we call our core, what do we call it? Is it a core team? The
Core renovation.
Core renovation team, where Lake Bluff Middle School is in the process of designing the renovations. And we have a team of 10 or 12 people who meet every other week and have been doing so for weeks and weeks and will continue to do so. And it's been a huge commitment on behalf of these folks. Many hours spent. I mean, these meetings are typically 2 hours. And I just want to individually thank people like Leanne Charlot in the community, Neil Dahlman, Ann Stewart, former PTO, Emily McBain, former Alliance member, Matt Kerouac, who's a local architect, Tad Delaney and Mallory Smith, who are teachers at the middle school, Steve Miller, who's our building and grounds supervisor, is that his title? Mr. Nate Blackmer, and the architects from White and Tom from IHC. All these guys have put in hours and hours and hours and to make the middle school project to help it become successful. And just thank you. Really appreciate all that you've done for us. It's been huge. Another thing to update you guys on, we met Gene and I and the architects met, was it last week, with the village at the PCZBA, the Planning Commission Zoning Board of Appeals. We met in it's called a working session, so it wasn't the official meeting, but we gave them a preliminary look at our design and we shared lots of plans and answered lots of questions. They kind of gave us some preliminary feedback, mostly things like, well, when we have our official meeting in whatever it was, X number of weeks, here's the kind of questions we're going to need answered. So they give us a heads up so we can come prepared to the next meeting. It was extremely productive, and we're trying to be as collaborative with the village as possible. So we spent a good couple of hours there with them going over the plans. It was very well received and got lots of sidebar comments on how impressed everybody was. So that was all good. I wanted to talk about, again, to the middle school. We are going to be beginning construction in February?
Hopefully February.
February, depending on the weather. And so we need to initiate communication with the neighborhoods surrounding the school. And I recently had conversations with some people who live immediately in that area, and we're going to be reaching out to some individuals to get to build a list of emails and contact information so that we can publish like a newsletter update very regularly to keep everybody in that immediate vicinity appraised of what's going on during construction, beginning well before construction starts. As well as we're going to put a tab on our website that will be a schedule and construction updates. Hopefully we'll also have a button on there where you can enter their email to, or some way to communicate if they want to get onto that email address to get these construction updates?
That should be done no later than this week or next week.
Okay, so that's all coming up. So I would ask people at home, if you watch this and you live in the neighborhood around the middle school, to please keep an eye out for this tab on the website. You can also forward me your email or Jean your email. We'll get it to the appropriate people to make sure you get on the list. And you can also recommend other people if you know friends or neighbors that need to be on this list to be updated on a regular basis, because we really want to do everything we can to communicate the process to everybody in the neighborhood as currently and as up to date as possible. The last thing I want to talk about is a slightly different topic, and this is very early. I happen to be looking through a calendar and realized that a year from this December, anybody interested in running for school board will have to submit their intent to run to, I guess it's the Regional Office of Education, or I forget exactly, it's the county. But it's about a year away, and these conversations take a long time to happen. So I would encourage anybody who is up for election to consider where you're headed over the course of the next year, as well as anybody in the community to start thinking about a run for school board, because we have elections coming up in 2017, but your deadline is in December of 2016. And I would also like to extend the offer that if anybody in the community is considering such a thing and would like to learn more about what it means to be a school board member, I would be glad to sit down and talk with them and share some of that experience. So just hoping to plant some seeds among my fellow board members or people in the community who are thinking about such things to start thinking about it, start planning. And that's my president's message.
The other thing to finish Mark's thoughts, I'm going to try to put a blurb in the village newsletter that many of the Lake Bluff community members actually get their updates on, and it will direct them to our website to sign up for updates. And we'll be scheduling some community meetings just to let people know what's going on when we have a few more details. A couple other quick things from superintendent's report. By law, we had to meet with administrators and teachers this week to start talking about student growth added to teacher evaluations. We had that meeting this week. It was a very meaningful meeting. Unfortunately, we have to make some big decisions on student growth when we still don't have our PARC data. So it's really presented a challenge for us because we're just kind of guessing what the PARC data will look like and trying to make some decisions on that. But we met the deadline for our meeting, and our decisions have to be made by the end of April, with student growth actually going into place next year for teacher evaluations. Just a reminder that our administrators all have student growth in their evaluations already. Our district will be, our teachers' goals will be aligned to the principal goals, so we'll all be working towards the same goals in the district, which makes it very aligned and really, we feel, will reap us the results that we're looking for that. The other thing I wanted to mention is last week, Mark and Richard and I met with the tri-board. We met with the park district in the village and had some great conversations, talking about all kinds of things going on in the community. Mark and I had to leave because we had our zoning committee meeting after that. I don't know if there's any further updates on that. It was more just bringing everybody up to date on things going on in the village and the park district.
Well, we talked about sharing some contracts. We would share potentially share some things. One was a salt agreement. We talked about, which would make sense. Well, the town buys hundreds of tons of salt and get it at a much better rate than we can get it at.
For sure.
And Drew said that probably wouldn't be a big deal to just if we told him what we needed to add on to his order. We talked about shared storage space, working something out with the park district and their building that is behind the elementary school. And I don't know if we don't even know where that's headed, but it could mean a renovation or rebuilding or repairing. But there is the room to rebuild it. We recently had a survey of that area done to begin that conversation. So, anything else that highlighted there? Oh, next week they're going to have your big review, Julie, the land use committee meeting, which will be interesting. We're going to get a presentation of that.
Okay.
And we had to leave before the park district did their whole thing.
No, I just say it's very cooperative.
Yeah.
Everyone is on that and the taking part in those meetings has the interest of the community at heart first.
Yeah.
It's not just their little fiefdom, it's
Right.
what can we do for the community. It's heartening.
It really is.
We've really tried to build that sense that we operate with the community in mind first, as opposed to individual fiefdoms, like you're saying. All right, you're done. That's good. So we'll move on to action items with discussion, and our first item is item 8A, and the approval of the 2015-2016 tentative tax levy. And this is the process of setting a levy is completed annually and must be approved by a school board prior to the last Tuesday in December. Levies are tentatively approved the month before to allow public notice, and I think we're a full month ahead of schedule on that calendar. And Jay's going to give us a quick overview before we go to motion.
I will just be going over the highlights of the riveting and informative presentation that I gave at the last meeting. If you missed it, it's on our website. You can check it out.
I rewatched it several times. So I had trouble sleeping in it.
It's got more hits when it's on YouTube.
Basically, as Mark said, we are 1 month ahead of schedule. We're approving the tentative tax levy tonight, which is an estimate of the taxes that we need for operations. This needs to be done at least 20 days prior to the passing of the final tax levy, and it also needs to be published in a paper of general circulation between 7 and 14 days prior to that passage. So we'll be putting that notice in the paper, and on November 17th we'll be coming back and passing the final tax levy. The parameters that went into the calculations for the tax levy, some are known and some are not yet known. The December 2014 CPI, which we used, was 0.8%, so that limits the increase on existing property to an aggregate of tax to 0.8%. This compares to last year where it was 1.5%, so the increase in taxes will be roughly half of what it was last year on existing property. The equalized assessed value is the taxable value of all the property in the district, and we're expecting that to be flat this year. It's been declining for many years. It's based on the past 3 years of sales, so as the market's starting to come back, we're still averaging in some of those declines from the previous years, but we're getting back to flat, and I would expect it to go up next year. Last year's EAV was a decrease of 1.2%, so we're making progress. This is also a quadrennial reassessment year in Lake County, which means that they reevaluate and reassess all the property in the county, which means that we're seeing a higher level of tax appeals. People are getting their assessments and not liking them, so they're protesting their appeal, their taxes with the county. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on between now and when the assessments are finalized. So there's a little bit more uncertainty in what the EAV value will be. I'm estimating new property at $3.5 million for next year. That includes the part of the Starbucks, part of the Target, part of the Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, and some large homes in Lake Bluff. And then historically, you can see we're higher than we have been in the last couple of years. There's been a little more development, particularly along 176. And what they do is they kind of prorate that new property as it comes on. So if it comes on in the middle of 2015, they give us a portion of that value as of January 1st, and then they give us the remainder of it the following year. So I expect another $1 million of new property from Target next year. And this is important for us because that's property that's never been taxed before, so that's all incremental money coming into the district.
It wasn't taxed at all?
Correct. The land value was taxed, but it was insignificant.
It's peanuts, compared to what we get.
So my recommendation is to maximize the current 2015 levy under the property tax limitation law, and with the important goal of protecting fund balance in light of some things that are coming down pike legislatively. There's talks of property tax freeze and a pension shift and some other things that will significantly curtail our ability to raise revenue. So I want to make sure that we have good fund balance to make sure that we don't get into financial distress.
And we're spending down a big chunk of our
And we're
fund balance with
funding
the
down.
middle schools. So.
Right, we're also spending roughly $3.5 million of our fund balance on middle school. So, and then we have until next April to, if we did decide to do any abatements to our debt service, we don't have to make that decision until April. So it is better to maximize the levy today and then kind of see where all the variables shake out, and then we can make that decision in the future if we decide we want to ever extend less than we ask for now. So just by asking for it now doesn't mean we have to extend it.
Jay, is there any? I just thought of this question now, so I apologize for giving you this earlier. You talking about we're a month ahead of schedule in this process? It's not due till the end of December or December.
But it needs to be turned into the county clerk by the last Tuesday of December.
Is there any advantage to waiting longer? Will any of these numbers firm up more by waiting that extra month, or
No.
no? Okay.
No, we won't find out anything else until March or April.
Okay.
So the calculation, if you look at, here's the 0.8 CPI, this flat EAV. Now you'll notice the new property number I'm using in my calculation is $5 million. I just a few minutes ago said that I only expect it to really be $3.5 million. I'm estimating on the high side because if I don't ask for enough on that new property, if it turns out to be higher, if it turned out to be $4 million, I'd only get the taxes on $3.5 million worth. So I'm hedging my bets and just making sure that we get all the taxes on that new property. And so that works out to a existing tax increase of CPI, tax on new property of $127,000, so for a total operating levy of $14.4 million. And in the resolution that you'll be approving tonight, it's a little bit higher than that. I essentially just rounded each fund to the nearest whole number, or $1,000, so that I think what you'll be approving tonight is $14,436.25. So if you see a discrepancy between the resolution and this number, it's just due to rounding by fund. And then the debt service tax extension is not part of the levy. That's something that the county clerk automatically extends based on our debt service schedule for debt that has already been issued. But the total taxes that would be extended given this levy would be $16.6 million, or 7% increase versus last year. So if there's any questions.
Well, the bulk of that increase is debt service levy, right?
The bulk of that increase is the debt service levy, right? The total, the operating levy increase is less than 2%. And then the increase in the levy, the debt service tax extension, is due to the fact that the debt restructure, some of those payments were pushed off into the future a little bit. And then also we just issued new debt for the middle school. This increase in debt works out to about $250 for an average home in Lake Bluff.
Okay.
Just a reminder that we seek tentative approval this evening, and then we publish our hearing date for next month, and then we'll pass the final levy next month and get that in and file it.
And for anybody who's interested, the resolution that we're considering too is in the board packet and available online.
Yes, and that resolution is a little bit different this year. It's a little bit more extensive and just provides more information about what we're doing.
Okay. Anybody have any questions?
I do have a question. When we decided to issue the most recent bonds for building, I recall seeing charts of the debt service numbers that we would expect thereafter. As I recall, it doesn't continue to go up from this 2.2 levels.
Right, no, it's very flat. This is the 1 year where there's an increase, and then the goal was to make it flat going forward. So it's level payments out for the next 20 years after this.
So while we're seeing this fairly noticeable increase here this year, it's not something people should expect to go again up next year.
Right. The actual payments will be flat. I had a slide in the last presentation illustrating that. And then as property values increase, the tax rate would actually come down because we have low dollar payments.
And that was a very deliberate structuring of that debt to do
I
that.
recall,
Yes.
I just sticker shock this one year was coming back, and I just wanted to make sure people knew that this is the 1 year in which we're gonna see that.
Right, and that's the compounding of the new debt plus the kind of phase in of the old debt to get to a level debt service payment.
Right, okay, thanks.
Jay, when we see CPI increasing 0.8% and then we see the operating tax levy go up by 1.7, that's double CPI, what would be the reason for that?
It's because of the impact of new property. So the CPI increases the tax increase to existing property that has not been taxed in the prior year, and then we get to add to that. On top of that, we basically get to extend that tax rate on all the new property in addition. So that extra money increases the aggregate extension. So the money that we get is 1.7% more than last year, but 0.8% of that is supported by existing property, and the rest of that burden is only on new property.
Okay, thanks.
And so actually, because I'm estimating high on the new property, it will probably be less than that when the real numbers come in. I'm guessing $80,000 or $90,000 of new property relative to my 127 that I have calculated on the slide.
We just don't want to leave it out there. We want to be able to capture all of the
If
property.
I only asked for 80 and it was 90, I'd get 80. But if
Right.
I asked for 127, then I'll get the 90.
Good strategy. Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? All right, may I have a motion to, thank you, Jay. May I have a motion to approve the 2015-2016 tentative tax levy resolution as recommended by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mark Berry,
Yes.
Leanne Charlotte, yes. Julie Gottschall,
Yes.
Richard Haig,
Yes.
Bill Hood,
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Okay, the motion is approved, and we will revisit that again in a month, right, for the final. And related to that is item 8B, approval of the date and time of the truth and taxation hearing. We are talking about a truth and taxation hearing for the tax levy, correct? To be held on Tuesday, November, at our next action meeting, Tuesday, November 17th at 6:45, immediately prior to our regular meeting.
And that hearing is similar to the hearing that we conducted today. Legally, if the tax extension goes up by more than 5%, we are required to do a truth and taxation hearing. We're not legally required to do it, but we do one for transparency reasons every year.
Anybody,
We can do a voice vote on that one too.
okay, anybody have any questions on that? All right, may I please have a motion to hold a truth and taxation hearing on Tuesday, November 17th, 2015 at 6:45 p.m. at the Lake Bluff Middle School, 31 East Sheridan Place, Lake Bluff, Illinois, and publish notification of the hearing as recommended by the administration.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Motion is approved. Item 8C, this directly has to do with the hearing we had earlier about the interfund transfer to take the working cash bond money and put it into the O&M fund so we can actually use it. So, are there any questions to Jay or the administration about that transfer of funds?
No.
May I have a motion to adopt a resolution directing the transfer of $5,666,151.70 from the Educational Fund to the Operations and Maintenance Fund of the Lake Bluff Elementary School District 65, Lake County, Illinois, as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Leanne Charlotte, yes. Julie Gottschall,
Yes.
Richard Haig,
Yes.
Bill Hood,
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes. Motion's approved. 8D, we get this every year. This is a huge thing, right?
Controversial.
The 2015-2016 State Library Grant. I think everybody on the board except for Phil has been here for this. We get, what, a couple $100 if we fill out? Oh, $750. That seems bigger than prior years.
Still 750.
Oh,
I think the deadline's only 75 cents a can.
Or $150, which ends less.
Yeah, 615, 7.
so I guess it says this grant doesn't need to be approved. However, In correspondence with Dr. Rubenstein, the Illinois State Board of Education strongly suggests board approval. May I have a motion to approve the 2015-2016 State Library Grant Program application as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Leanne Charlo, yes. Julie Gatchell?
Yes.
Richard Haig?
Yes.
Phil Hood?
Yes.
Susan Ryder?
Yes.
Mark Barry?
Yes. Motion's approved.
I didn't realize the Secretary of State was also the state librarian.
We don't know.
Who knew? Does include that on his letterhead all the time.
Nice little bonus one.
All right. Item 8E has to do with independent contractor agreement with Janice Heigl, who's a math consultant, correct, from Educational Solutions. And I don't know, does anybody in the administration like to comment on that briefly before we go?
I'd be happy. Janice has worked in the district. She started the year before I started. She is the one that's totally transformed our math program. Used to be on the Gates Foundation. She's phenomenal. And every year we've contracted her for a few days less because she comes in and really is working with our teachers on observing other teachers and giving feedback. It's a great model. She's phenomenal.
You guys have questions? May I have a motion to approve the independent contractor agreement 2015-2016 with Janice Heigl of Educational Solutions Northwest as recommended by the administration?
So moved?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Julie Gatchell?
Yes.
Richard Haig?
Yes.
Phil Hood?
Yes.
Susan Ryder?
Yes.
Mark Barry?
Yes.
Leanne Charlo, yes.
Motion's approved. Similar motion for 8F. We're talking about an independent contractor agreement with Ms. Wilma Smiter for assistive technology. Gene, if you can give us that same.
I'm actually going to turn this one over to Kevin because I don't know that much about this one.
So prior to my arrival, we had contracted with Wilma Smiter to work with some students who are placed outside of the district who have some pretty extensive devices that they use to communicate. And so we have a couple of students who are placed outside the district right now that Wilma actually works with the teams at each of those schools to make sure that the students have the appropriate assistive tech so that they can communicate. We've seen significant growth with one student in particular that Wilma has been working with. So.
Are these the devices that used to be these big clunky things that they push buttons that they now use iPads?
These devices are still actually the big clunky things.
Yeah.
This was the last resort, so a pretty expensive piece of equipment and some work to go with it.
They're pretty amazing transformations I've seen in these. I've seen a few kids who use it, and it's amazing how when they get the power of speech through a machine, it changes their world. So
we went from 6 words to over 100 now with one of our students. I mean, the growth has been quite phenomenal since we purchased the device for him.
It's a special thing.
I heard from the parent this week about the device, and that parent, they've been able to join Boy Scouts for the first time.
Oh, that's great.
And participate in Boy Scouts actively, which was never an opportunity they had before.
That's
so
fantastic.
really quite amazing things that Wilma was able to do with some of our students there.
You guys have any questions? Okay, we have a motion to approve the independent contractor agreement 2015-2016 with Ms. Wilma Smiter as recommended by the administration.
So moved.
Second.
A roll call vote, please.
Richard Haig?
Yes.
Phil Hood?
Yes.
Susan Ryder?
Yes.
Mark Barry?
Yes.
Leanne Charlo, yes. Julie Gatchell?
Yes.
Motion is approved. Good. And one more of these. Item 8G, it has to do with the approval of independent contractor agreement with the Eklund Consulting Firm. And maybe Gene could enlighten us a little bit on that.
Nate Eklund has been working with both buildings in talking about communication within the buildings, setting up meetings, making the best use of meetings, doing distributed leadership in the building. And this year we're adding the other layer of the district office administrators with the principals and building level administrators. He is going to do a couple full day and half day workshops with us, and then will be coaching us this year. And we are hoping, if you remember way back to the 5 essentials that Kevin presented earlier in the year, our leadership indicator it definitely went up this year, but it was still very low. We're expecting expecting Nate to do some great work with us and really kind of align with what the buildings are doing for their communication and meeting styles. And I had sent an email out to all of you on this yesterday too.
How many years have we been working with Declan?
This is the first time he would work with us. He's worked in the Nate's building probably 5 or 6 years, and Margaret's building, this is his second year.
So this contract, this kind of arrangement, this is new, or this is something that's been at the various schools?
For this contract for us is brand new.
Brand new. Okay.
But he's been working in the middle school and at the elementary school, and that's a separate contract. This is just strictly for the district office and our team building for administrative team. We have a lot of things that we need to do to really align our practices with the teachers and what they're doing in the buildings. It's just like any other corporation would do in coaching and working with their administration and their business leaders.
Mm-hmm. So there's a contract with the elementary school, a contract with the middle school, and now this one. What's the sum total?
He has not even gotten me the contracts for the 2 schools. He's been working with them. That's something we talked about today. So I'm not sure what the total is going to look like for the other 2 buildings. He's done some great work, and this is, like I said, this is just the district office and administrative team work. His work in these 2 buildings is with teachers and teacher leaders in their building, and really with the whole staff.
And it works through Charmed for our funding, so part of the funding was through the Charmed Foundation.
This is all budgeted for, right? This isn't out of the blue.
It's all in the budget.
Anybody else have questions?
So to clarify, I think we are not taking action on the 2 that are at the school level, but we've approved those separately, or we will approve those separately, or
We will approve those separately. This
Okay.
is for 2 retreats for administrative team, coaching, and monthly coaching for all of us from now through the end of the school year.
And he provided a budget. Our consultant provided a budget that you sent via email,
Right.
and his estimated budget of $10,500, which
Right.
is what is covered by this particular
Correct.
contract.
Correct. He is also working with, I think he said 3 or 4 other school districts on the North Shore, doing the exact same type of things. Because all of us, I know in our district, we have really worked with trying to make our meeting time as efficient as possible, because we have a lot of meetings that we have to have for all the different things that we have to do as a school district. And now we're doing kind of the final touches as far as bringing district office administrators in and principals to really complete the whole big picture of leadership, change leadership, and communication. That's really needed here. And I think that was somewhat apparent in the 5 essentials when you guys were presented that data. So
So the term began in August. Have they rendered any services yet?
he's met with me a few times for this part. He's worked with the buildings already, yes.
Right, which is a separate
Yeah.
deal. Okay. Okay.
And we have a date scheduled in December for him to start.
And so it says that the rate's $10,500 for the term, and then he must submit an invoice. Is that then, do we pay for each program or each meeting or each?
We're trying to get our independent contractors to submit bills either monthly or when they've delivered a service.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Janice Heigl was in district today, or did something in math today.
No, she was in earlier this month, and in the independent contractor agreement, there's a clause about how often they are to submit their bills. They have to submit their bills within 30 days.
Right. I guess what I'm driving at is, do we know how much we will ultimately be charged of the $10,500? Is it just that's the rate and he'll charge us every month? He'll just break it down, or will it actually be, well, I did this service, it took this long,
No.
the rate for that service is
The
that?
total will be $10,500. And that's even if we have to do some additional things. Because
Okay.
the coaching, and he'll be coaching all of us monthly on top of that.
How many hours do you figure that $10,000 get you at this time?
It's going to be a lot. Well, we've got 7 administrators. You have to figure if we're all coached once a month for December, January, February, March, April, May, and finish up in June, that's 7 months. So, and then we have 2 administrative retreats. I really feel very strongly this is something we need to kind of complete the big picture for our administration and for our climate in the school district.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just trying to quantify how many hours we get for what we're paying for.
It's in here. It's what Jean sent.
Right, so I sent it in an email yesterday with the whole attachment.
Yeah, it says planning and preparation 4 to 6 hours, retreat 4 to 6 hours, debriefing 2 to 4 hours, ongoing coaching at $100 an hour, $2,400, so 24 hours of ongoing coaching, and year up wrap up session for another $800. So it totals all those things total for $10,500. It's a fair amount of hours. It's 40 something in the neighborhood of 40 hours. Questions? Concerns? More? Okay. May I please have a motion to approve the independent contractor agreement for 2015-2016 with Eklund Consulting LLC, Mr. Nate Eklund, as recommended by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Phil Hood.
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes.
Leanne Charlo, yes. Julie Gottschall.
Yes.
Richard Haig.
Yes.
Motion's approved. Consent, no, personnel report, H.
That was added.
Yeah, the item H, approval of the personnel report. And this week we were talking about, this month we were talking about a leave of absence for Janelle Carney for the end of the school year under board policy 5:250, leave of absence without pay to provide care for a family member. Anybody have any questions before I call for a motion? May I please have a motion to approve the personnel report for October 27, 2015 as presented by the administration?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Mark Berry.
Yes.
Leanne Charlo, yes. Julie Gottschall.
Yes.
Richard Haig.
Yes.
Phil Hood.
Yes.
Okay, and thank you. Motion's approved. So our last action item is the consent agenda. And this month on our consent agenda, we have the budget hearing minutes from September 29th, 2015. The regular Board of Ed meeting minutes from September 29th, 2015. The committee of the whole meeting minutes from October 13th, 2015. The October bills report. The October impress report. The P-card report. The September's treasury report. Is there any one of those items we should pull from the consent agenda to discuss outside of that consent agenda? No. All right. So we have a motion to approve the consent agenda for October 27th, 2015 as presented by the administration.
So moved.
Second. Roll call vote, please.
Mark Berry.
Yes.
Leanne Charlo, yes. Julie Gottschall.
Yes.
Richard Haig.
Yes.
Phil Hood.
Yes.
Susan Ryder.
Yes.
Motion is approved. Thanks. Okay, we've gotten through the action items. Now we go to discussion. And moving to first item with Dr. Sophie and the board planning calendar.
Everybody needs to either get out calendars or a pen because there's going to be a couple changes that I want everyone to take note of. We have 4 meetings scheduled from now through the end of the school year, and those dates are November 10th, November 17th, December 1st, and December 15th. Now, there's going to be a couple changes, and one of them I think you'll really like, unless, of course, you don't like canceling a meeting, but then there's some stipulations that go with that. What we're looking at is November 10th, we're probably going to be doing our board self-evaluation, because per board policy, we have a board self-evaluation once every 2 years. Barb Tony, who would do it, she was been in before, and you did this 2 years ago in January, she said, is just confirming the November 10th date. So right now it's tentatively scheduled for that date. November 17th is our regular November board meeting. We're having it at the middle school. A couple of you had some great suggestions as to having it at the middle school and then touring the building to actually see where all the renovations are going to be going. We're going to be approving our levy. We have our audit presentation. We have to wrap up these 3 policies still, which has been on my to-do. So that will be November 17th. The December 1st meeting, we're going to need to cancel because that is a meeting that we've got, Mark and I and Jay are going to need to be at the PCZBA and zoning. So we'll cancel that meeting, and then we have our December, what was the date I gave you? 15th regular board meeting. The only thing I want to make a comment on, and I don't know how this is going to play out in January, IHC will guide us a little bit more on this, is we may need to have a couple quick approval meetings for bids. That will be starting in January. And we'll take a poll to see if 7 in the morning is better or at 5 at night. They're going to be very quick approval meetings, but just kind of be on alert that we're going to need to call them when the bids are ready, and we'll need to get quorum for those. So as it stands right now to the end of the year, we've got November 10th. Hopefully will be our board self-evaluation workshop. November 17th is our regular board meeting. December 1st is canceled. And December 15th is our regular December board meeting. Any questions?
Any objections to canceling?
We thought there might be some objections, so we thought I'd run it by
Nobody's
you
crying
first.
about that? Okay, you good?
That concludes my report.
Okay. Item 9B, enrollment, and Dr. Kevin Rubinstein will review the board current enrollment numbers.
So last year, one of the things that the board asked for was a more regular enrollment update, and so this year we decided to provide those to you in quarterly installments. So this is the first quarter update, and our enrollment has gone up ever so slightly since the start of the school year. And I was joking with Dr. Sophie yesterday that I think that we should do these every month because of the fact that every time we do an enrollment update, we actually get. I put together this enrollment update on Thursday, and Friday we had 4 more kids register, and Monday we had 2 more kids register. So every time I update it, it is a little bit out of date, but that is all right. So we're going up ever so slightly. One of the other things that Phil asked me to take a look at as students were enrolling this school year is if the number of kids who were enrolling coming from special populations like English language learners or students with special education needs, if they are moving into the district at greater numbers than they are moving out. And I would say that it's not 1-for-1 exchange. It's more like a 1.5-for-1 exchange. So for about every 1 kid with those sorts of needs who moves out of the district, we get probably 1.5 of those kids moving back in. So really our numbers are shifting on a day-to-day basis, and we made it a relatively easy process for enrollment, still sticking to all of the rules and regulations that we need to.
I also want to point out and remind everybody that when we did our enrollment project last year, John, Mark, Leanne, myself, and Jay, one of the problems that we had in the district over the course of the years was the date for monitoring enrollment changed every year. So what we did, starting when we could do it, is we've got 6-day enrollment. So we will always go back to the 6-day enrollment so that our figures on the website will always be accurate for each year. It's very confusing for community members that look at enrollment when we have different numbers all year long. So, and that, I think, concludes Kevin's report.
Anybody have any questions for Dr. Kevin? All right. Now on our agenda, we bring in from San Diego, California, hot off the plane, probably a little fatigued, Mr. Craig Sutka from White Architect. And Joe, are you going to tag team with him? Tom, rather? You're going to tag team? So Tom, your last name again? Toronto from IHC, or construction company? Construction manager?
He does.
Craig, you're going to show us that same thing you showed us the other day? Oh, you guys are going to love this.
That was so cool.
There's some really cool stuff to see at the middle school. Thank you.
Neat stuff. Did you want to put one here? No. Millions
I
and
have an entire shelf at home dedicated to middle school renovations. It's crazy.
already.
Yeah.
We've had so many meetings on that.
Guys, it's amazing.
I'm gonna hop right into it, ladies and gentlemen of the board, Dr. Sophie, and distinguished guests. Thanks for having me back. It seems like that was a real short month, wasn't it? I feel like I was just here, but been having a ton of meetings since you've made the decision as a group, as a board, to kind of move forward with the expedited schedule, and everybody has been super cooperative. There have been a ton of meetings. We have gone back in front of the staff to have more detailed and substantive conversations about the classrooms and some of the programs that are going to be getting new spaces and renovated spaces. We still have one more step to go as far as is that portion of the project is in particular probably going to be going back with the library staff, the science lab staff, and the fine arts, visual arts program, just to kind of work out in more detail some of the things that are happening in those spaces, as they are pretty comprehensive programs and really require another kind of sifting through and another level of conversation. On top of that, you heard Mr. Berry talk a little bit about coordinating with the village, and been having actually quite a few conversations, both in face-to-face and via the email and telephone with them, to make sure that we get our ducks in a row for the project. In particular, we had a workshop meeting the other, was that last week?
Last week, right?
Last week. And it was with the planning board and the architectural review board, just to keep it simple. And so there's about 20 of us kind of huddled in the back over there along the table, and got some very nice, very good feedback, both in terms of what they're expecting when we formally go in front of them in December 1st for the site and the zoning items, and then I don't remember the exact date for the architectural review board, but it's 1 month later. I think it's maybe the beginning of January.
Yeah, the final readings are in January, and I think
Yeah.
the big important part that we wanted to convey in this is there was feedback given. It was all good feedback. We brought it back to the team, and we're still talking about it as a team. So it was actually a very good meeting.
Yep. Yes, sir. Don't block the camera. That might be his concern. Not you. Tell him. Concerned about. And we also have a more informal coffee, I believe, coming up. Is it next week or
Next week, next Thursday.
Next Thursday, to meet with the chairpersons of the PCZBA and the architectural review board.
November 5th.
Right. We'll sit down after coffee early in the morning and just make sure we understand all their questions and concerns, and get some kind of a little bit of help before we go to that next level.
Yeah. So, again, the trend continues with sort of the process and how it's supposed to evolve. It is evolving, so that's really makes it easier for us, even with the time crunch that we're under. So, all good stuff. Let's see. It was just a few days ago that we had an opportunity meeting with the core team, and just to get them updated on the happenings of the project. At that point, we also were able to share with them a couple programs and, the design. We use a couple programs in our office to help us understand the design, both internally inside the building and outside the building. So it was those two programs that we actually presented to that group. Got some good conversation going as far as that goes, and some good feedback that we're going to be taking back to the entire design team once we get your thoughts and impressions tonight. So it's those same programs that I'd like to take a few moments now and show to you. You have some of that, the content right there in stills, but there are really more three-dimensional, almost animated programs that might help you even understand a little bit more what we're doing there. So, do I need to take this microphone when I go? Because I have to do
Yes.
it there to.
Yes.
Okay. I can take that.
You have to see this, we decided we didn't want the signs on the building. He's gonna show it to you.
And before he starts, I just wanted to
Yeah.
point out to the board, I don't know if you guys noticed, Jean sent home her superintendent's update the other week, and one of the things she said on there is, if you guys could find time in your schedules to go walk the middle school, the former East School lot in the field,
Yeah.
with an eye toward the future, because we really are going to need to start making some decisions as to the future of that piece of property. So if you've never walked it, please arrange to walk over it and just look at it a little bit more closely than just driving by, so that we can talk about it intelligently. And that's for the meeting at the middle school.
All right. What I want to do is take you through some of the exterior design. Let's see how it's evolving, and share with you some of the thoughts that we got back from the core team, get your reaction, and then kind of put that into the pot as we kind of wrap things up for the architectural review board. What we're looking at right over here. Let me step back. One of the things that happens when you get into a project like this, you get into more and more of the details, and sometimes things aren't exactly what you thought they were. Sometimes they're better, sometimes they're a little bit more of a challenge. And we knew that we were going to have a bit of a challenge working with the outside of the building, just given the different styles and sort of the.
How many styles did you?
What we found, let me just jump right into it. What we found was about 5 or 6 different color bricks, about 5 different types of window types, and then a few different styles from different eras. So when we say it's an eclectic school, I can vouch for that, at least from the outside. And that became a really big talking point and decision point for us to have to negotiate as we kind of try to tie the whole building together. I'll explain some of those things in just a moment. What we want to do is start off at the main entrance right now. And what you're looking at here is a bird's eye view, kind of as we parachute down into the front of the building over here. And looking at trying to find ways of combining the new ramp as well as stairs up to the main entrance. Trying to give a new expression, a little refreshing, I guess, if you will, as well as call attention to the fact that this is where you go. This is by no means the final solution, but it is a first blush an attempt at trying to kind of group all those different elements together to give a new appearance to the building. Maintaining the canopy, but maybe recladding it with a different color is where we're kind of starting, and that's what we're looking at right over here. You can see we have 2 different areas that we're looking at for signage, whether it actually translates into 2 different signs, or one in one location or the other. Certainly could use your feedback on, see what your thoughts are. What you're looking at right over here is a kind of an extended reconfigured plaza area, a little bit of area for kids to queue up and parents to queue up before they ascend up the steps or the ramp up to the main entrance. And then the ramp happens right over back here, kind of zigzags back and forth and up to the main level. And then a series of stairs right over here, kind of sandwiched between planter boxes to soften up some of the harder materials that we need to use to construct, to elevate everybody up to the main level.
Craig, I'm going to stop you for a minute because there was an important piece from our meeting that I think the board members need to hear. Nate had shared, because we had looked and said, because it kind of looks choppy a little bit, and Nate had shared that this was very good for student control because the kids actually have to kind of get in some semblance of order to use the stairs to go up.
It follows them in.
It kind of funnels them in the way that he likes them to go in. We also talked on this particular drawing about we probably would not have signs on both the places that it shows right now, but it's important to know that the signs reach different people. You're either looking at it from Sheridan, which it's kind of hard to see anyway from Sheridan, or Sheridan Place, and we had also talked about maybe just getting a new outside sign and putting it closer to the building to hit both areas. So there's all kinds of feedback, and that's what Craig's gonna be looking from you tonight too.
The other comment that was made in the group, which was interesting, and we're going to take it back through the process here. But while the stairs might be appropriate width-wise, might be that we want to take a look at maybe stairs along this side as well, and maybe snake those back or tilt those back to that sort of this drop-off area. So that's another item that we want to kind of investigate a little bit further before we wrap things up.
My feeling is, and I've heard somebody say the word choppy, I would call the look a little jagged. Can you have stairs that span that whole front to where the current stairs are, and maybe have a curve to them, or is that something you can't do?
Well, we certainly could do that. It isn't cheap a cheap endeavor to do these. You're forming a lot of concrete and so forth. So we have to be very cognizant of the limitations of our budget and make sure that it's functional as well as beautiful and all those other things. But definitely something that we'll take a look at. We just need to watch out because town is on the prowl right now. So.
I didn't think to ask this when we were meeting before, but I'm noticing when we look at this that there's not that ramp right outside the door. So does that mean you're raising that step, or we're doing something so that the door is now even with the step?
Yeah, that's a detail that we have to get into. We're
still not there.
fully cognizant that has to be resolved.
I was just curious.
Yeah. It might be that the ramp is going to run right up to the door level, and then there might be another step, but it'll be a little bit more intentional, and certainly formed in a way that calls attention to itself so that there's no tripping. Yeah. The other thing, and so we're also looking at the different heights of materials and so forth, or the plan boxes, to make sure that security isn't compromised and access to parts of the building that don't need to be accessed by students does not occur, and so forth. So. All part of kind of the next go around, the next iteration of this part of the design. We go just a second here and take you back to the back of the building. The big thing here with this is it sets a stage for the materials that we want to use. There's different kinds of materials, both face brick, which I'll get into a little bit more detail later. What is called sort of hardy board is cementitious fiber board. Material that allows a little variation and a little warmth adds a little warmth to the expression. And then whether it's some cast stone or some limestone or something, just to kind of, again, tie back to other parts of the building that has it, that we're going to try to use in a different way, but as a means to, like I said, make the building whole.
You have lots of things to tie into too, because with those 6 different bricks and things.
So we're going to go back to the classroom edition. No, you know what? Sorry, I'm teasing you. We're going to go. Forgive me. I know how to. I just know enough to be dangerous with this program. Okay, I'm going to take you back to the Fine Arts Edition off of Sheridan Place, and a little jagged. This is the existing ramp and ramp here, and some of the stairs that you have. But one of this is the area that was really probably the toughest for us to kind of get under control, I guess, if you will. And we had a choice to make, and you have this sort of addition over here, which is from the 1980s and all the exuberance that applies. And then really the main part of the building, and then there's like 3 different colored bricks right over here, right, just in this area. Then there's the main part of the building from the 50s and 60s that is a little bit more restrained, and really kind of what we decided was to not to mimic, but to at least honor that portion of the building. In what we're doing with the addition. We knew we couldn't completely mask the 80s portion, we thought we'd at least sandwich it.
And because it's part of the library and that's going to receive a lot of attention as far as the renovation goes, might be a nice expression on the outside of all the excitement that's going to be happening on the inside. So if we kept it in place, but we kind of bookended between the existing building on the right side and at least try to at least give contemporary expression of the same materials, proportions, and colors to the left. To the left in the addition, then probably have hopefully a little bit of success. Also keeping in mind that the spaces that are housed in that fine arts addition really require and need a lot of daylight infused into those spaces. That's something that we're very cognizant of in all our designs, but those programs in particular really could use it. And so we came up with what you're looking at over here, the same color brick, and for some reason this is real choppy, and I don't know why. It's not as clear.
It's not.
So I apologize for that, but same color brick with all the glass that you can see at the corner over here, and then sort of these punched openings that has a surround of some limestone or some cast stone. We use that same material again on either side here. One of the challenges that we have is the fact that the ground slopes down pretty dramatically in the front over here, and not trying to expose the foundations and have to really take a look at the landscaping and the grading and control erosion. We elected to bring as much of the front of the building down as we possibly could, but then what we wanted to do to avoid just a big blank wall, sort of these planter boxes on the end over here, and on this side, on the far east side, would be an emergency exit, but just with a little bit more embellishment as far as material goes. Again, to give a little bit more interest to the facade and use some of the materials that you have on other parts of the building. Your art room would be located right over here, followed by the drama department, and then choir gets sort of this big volume box that you see on the far end, needed for acoustic purposes and so forth, and it really kind of matches the volume and the shape of the band room, which is on the far end, and has another expression that we're not going to get into. So, then that brought us to the windows, and if you take a look at again that 1980s edition, you see sort of these square box punched openings, what we call them, kind of reminiscent of these medallions or these plaques that you have
on that
front of the building. So solid, bas-relief, concrete plaques. And picking up that same geometry, we use those kinds of windows in strategic locations, this edition and the classroom edition, again to make reference to the building and tie it all together. Wherever there's an instructional space, those boxed punched openings have glass in them, so again, we're letting natural light into the spaces. Wherever there's an entrance, like where the district office, this would be the district office entrance, those would be solid, opaque, maybe more like signage, bas-relief sculptural elements. So by the art room, punched openings, glass. The choir room receives those same kinds of punched openings, glass. The library is on the other end over here. I said the district office right over here, and then the front of the building.
Notice there's no plaque.
There's no
Yeah,
plaque.
the plaque's gone.
Is there, right?
At
At the front of the building over here, again using the same kinds of kind of medallions or plaques, we cut those into the facade and again call attention and tie it all together.
So if you can't beat it, join it, right?
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. I wish I would have said it. Lastly, I want to take you along out to the back and the classroom edition that we have. Again, using the same bricks, color brick and style of brick, as well as the same kind of punched openings that we had before. And then using that on the outside of the building, series of punched openings again for the classroom, light into the classrooms, and then some larger window spaces on the corners as well as on some of the main walls, again to make sure that abundance of daylight is penetrating into the spaces. As we look to the back, sort of that same vocabulary in the corners, punched openings, here and here, that sandwich, and bookend, larger expanse of windows for the classrooms that are beyond. And then lastly, continuing that same vocabulary all the way around. And if you remember from the floor plans that I shared last time,
The hallways are expected to be activated for educational purposes. And so, again, trying to get as much natural daylight, not just into the classrooms, but into those spaces that we traditionally think of just as secondary spaces is going to be really important and something that we're going to explore. In addition, one of the things that came out of the conversations that we had with the village as well as the core team and the teachers, making sure and potentially exploring the possibilities of some skylights in this portion of the building, so that really in the center over there, you'll get some residual light from the classrooms, which is intentional and purposeful. But I think from above too, if we can try to maximize that ability, I think it'll make the space that much more inviting to be in. So that's kind of the long and the short of it. We have a little ways to go yet, but I would certainly welcome any feedback that any of you have as far as what you saw. We have scenes kind of set up, and then I'll take you around, but give you an opportunity of seeing different views.
But our team was too. I think what we kind of concluded with is maybe if we had a brand new sign made and we put it like so that it faced both sides, so we only need one sign that you could see from Sheridan and Sheridan Place.
Or a nice wooden sign out of the street maybe.
I'm hung up on the entrance of it. It looks great, by the way. Great work. A very neat program that we scroll around on that. But it's the entrance. And I'm wondering, what is, if you were to walk directly out the door and go straight, I see that ledge.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Okay.
What is that?
What would you put it?
This is the first blush of that. Right now you have a railing that's right in front.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a couple different options that we have. We could actually do a built-in bench along over here, which might be possible. If things evolve that we want to have stairs here, which we had talked about, then you wouldn't have to worry about it as much. That's something else that is a benefit or a pro to putting stairs over there. Or a planter box of some kind. I assume that the reason why you have, one of the reasons why you have a handrail over here is because you don't want people walking on the grass and then down. I mean, it's not that big of a, it's graded, so it's not that big of a step. So it's just something that we're going to have to look at. We know
It's definitely on the radar.
We're not done with it yet.
That was the one place that people were a little bit.
Yeah.
Right
That's
now,
some feedback.
I see the kids pouring out of the school and jumping off
Yeah.
the ledge and not bothering to go down in there.
Yeah. One of the things that we want to make sure that we do, you got some trash cans up there or some storage bins.
We have
and
storage
things like that.
bins.
We gotta clean that up a little bit as part
Those
of
are all
this. So
gonna be
we
gone.
intentionally didn't put those there. It's one of those things.
Decorative element.
You know, those planter boxes might be also opportunities for the teachers and the kids to plan things on a yearly basis. We didn't have that conversation yet, but instead of having us do some plans, which we could, I've got landscape architects that could take care of that, but it might be a nice personal touch to have, maybe a science class use that as a means of growing things or planting things with PT or something. Talk about that.
Around the door, are those glass panels on either side of the door, or what? Yeah, what, separated by white, or is that?
Yeah, those are there now. We're not going to touch them. We might paint them up a little bit different color once we get into that study, but we weren't anticipating to replace those.
Yeah, I didn't remember that was glass.
The other thing we're talking about, which Drew said he may be able to help us with, is possibly enlarging our bicycle racks, because so many of our kids ride their bikes to school.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing we still need to finish discussing. But the two biggest discussions you guys have already brought up, the signs and walking off that step. And we're just not done with that piece yet.
Yep.
Because we want the entrance to be spectacular, to match the rest of the building.
And now it doesn't look so inviting.
Right.
It's narrow.
A little jagged or rough.
Right.
Are we replacing that piece of that retaining wall, or for, I don't know if that's what it's called? That brick?
This right here?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good.
Mm-hmm. And then you have some, you also have some like landscape block walls here. There's some cracking going on. That's all done. We gotta get rid of all that.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then this is that hardy board siding right over here, and then same material that we would use on the outside. And then in selected locations down in the classroom edition as well as on fine arts and performing arts edition.
So the limestone you explained, and then the reddish stuff, fiberboard you explained, there's a different color over here in this other planter that's like a brown or gray, black. What's going
Don't
on
know what
there?
that is yet.
No.
We just discussed this once. The rest of the building was their big challenge, and actually I know for a fact that Craig and Stephanie took a walk on the beach, and I'm thinking, why would you walk on the beach? Do you want to explain? Because I didn't know that.
It's really going to affect us more when we get into the inside of the building and start talking about the inside materials, but just trying to draw some inspiration from the local area. So whenever I'm here, Stephanie's here, we drive around the neighborhoods. Sometimes even walk around the neighborhoods before the board meeting, and just to get a feel for the spirit and the character of Lake Bluff, which there is an abundance of. And
What's like the building, right?
Like the building. That's right.
I think we could do better. But on one of those walks, and Stephanie and I went all the way down, right down. I don't. The name of the street here.
Center in Scranton.
Yeah. We just all went all the way down to the beach and just try to get a feel and a flavor for what was going on there. Happened to be a very cold, windy day, but the colors that we're going to be ultimately bringing to you, as well as some of the materials that we're going to talk about even today, and then more later on, are a reflection of our interpretation and things that we saw and we encountered on our walks. So.
Can you change the angle of this so we can see a more natural view? Like one you might actually experience? Because to me that looks better to me from that angle. The other one looks like a lot's going on. And the railing is just pictured as white, but it wouldn't necessarily be white, or?
No, it probably won't be white.
Yeah.
Let's just say that this section is under construction, it's under development. This has got some work to do.
It's got some work to do, both colors and materials, and even some of the forms.
Can I make a suggestion?
Start.
That we go. You show that inside video that you showed us. That'll, if you have the resolution working on the interior portion of it.
That was cool.
This was cool. This is way cooler.
So this is the other tool that we like to use. We actually construct. The building, I don't know if I had mentioned this before, we use a building information modeling program which allows us, as we're drawing, you're actually building it in a digital format. And then we can elevate and move through the building to understand where there might be conflicts between structural elements, mechanical elements, and the walls and all that kind of thing. We take that program and we're able to interface with Google. I don't even remember the name of it. Google, it's kind of a weird name. Anyhow, and it allows us to get a 360 view of things, and allow us to share with you some perspectives on this. And what I'm going to show you now is really the library, and one of the things that is.
That would be.
Remember we did that before.
Well,
we did the lights.
Yeah, we should if we can. One of the things that. We heard time and time again was a concern about what happens in the lower level of the basement or in the garden level, and how does that really coordinate and somehow interface with the main level. So we have a couple perspectives or a couple views that we want to share with you. We're going to spin around. I'll go slowly so you don't get sick. But this is, we start off with a view looking from the top of the platform stairs. If we have a communicating stair that kids can sit on and eat on and be lectured to and have social engagements and so forth. If we're standing at the main level, looking down to the lower level is kind of what you're looking at over here, and that's where the kids would be eating most of the time. It's also a professional development area, as well as potential area for you to have your board meetings. Looking back in this direction is really looking back into the library, with on the side, you can see the beginnings of glass openings and how natural light can come in through the science labs into the library. And then all the different furniture that goes into making this really functional, exciting, dynamic space. We do not by any stretch of the imagination, we're not going to have everything be white. This is just a model, and we have to kind of embellish that as we go through. But this is really the three-dimensional forms and some of the furniture that might go into that. So as we spin around,
That's the cafeteria.
still a little dark on this side over here, but you get the feel of how the lower level, the garden level, and the upper level will kind of interface with each other. And you see, we'll go down there in just a moment. These are the platform stairs. Here's all your tables and chairs for eating and so forth. You can see we're looking at proposing some countertop stools for kids just to give a little variety of where they can sit down and eat and so forth. Those would be built in. Everything else would be movable and then folded, moved into a storage area that's along the side over here. And then way in the back over there, you see sort of that's the extra classroom space that we have. There'll be a folding glass wall in the back over there. So again, that particular room won't feel like it's closed off from the rest of the building. And I hope that dissuades some of the concern that we heard from the staff, as well as you, Dr. Sophie, about having some instructional space in the basement. But
so the counters, the bar counters, or whatever you call the counters, those are to account for some of the structural pieces you found that you can't move down there, right?
Yes, we had to keep. Originally, we wanted this wall to be eliminated and moved so that we have free, unencumbered access to the prep area back over here. We were able to maintain some cut openings so we can get a nice flow of space. But this wall right over here is a structural element that we can't move, and strongly advised by our structural engineer to keep in place. And the same thing happens right over here with this wall. So we try to make best use of those, and I think architecturally it helps define the space. It doesn't close off the spaces that are on the other side around it, and in a way that actually could be kind of exciting once we get into the color and the finishes of those walls and see how that evolves.
Is there an angle that we can see that? There you go. That wall from without the glare. When it was darker, you could see that better before.
Yeah.
That's a nice soft texture on that wall, whatever you guys are using.
You talking about this wall?
Yeah.
Yeah. He hasn't gotten into the waves yet either. The waves on the other ceiling.
We'll talk about that in just a moment. This was another one of those walls that we were hoping to kind of put more punch openings on the main level. Again, it's there for structural purposes more than just bearing. But we thought it might be actually a nice opportunity if we kind of clad it.
It was. There, that's
textured wood material on one side. We could use that same material on the back wall of the library to the south.
Now you can see the ceiling.
And again, kind of provide a nice containment of the space and so forth, and give it a little bit more warmth than it otherwise would have. I'm going to go zipping around. That's your existing hallway. Moving around there. Another structural column. And then this is what used to be your dining area. You see we're continuing some of that same wood material into the space over here. This is just a placeholder as far as furniture goes. We have a whole exercise that needs to happen with that. That starts, we haven't talked about it, but our suggestion would be to start that conversation in January. So they have adequate time to order furniture and so forth by the time you open. It'll arrive by the time you open up an office.
This is going to be the new STEM lab, and the curriculum person will be meeting with me and a person from the Alliance and PTO. And right now the guy's in jury duty, so he said he'd get back to me as soon as he's out.
So right now this is a solid wall. That's where your prep area is. We would demolish that and kind of open that up to the library and the gathering stair. This really would be, your STEM area would also be a place for some lockers and cubbies that we're proposing, and a conversation we have to have a little bit farther down the road. As we zip around, there's our chimney / structural column that we've begun to have conversations with our core team, and that might be another one of those opportunities, like the planter boxes on the outside, to engage the students, maybe even the staff a little bit in terms of what they want that to become and how they want it adorned.
But it's largely fixed, right? It has to be there.
It has to be there. We can't get rid of it. One of the things we were looking at internally was maybe we could even make some little cubby, kind of punch some little nooks and seating nooks inside that, but just about every bit on the inside is
Oh,
used. And
seating.
it really would make
I
it
didn't think
usable.
about that, like a little seat thing around it. I still like the fireplace idea.
All right, and so we kind of wind up right back where we're at.
Did you talk about your ceiling, Craig?
We will on the next one. I want to save a little bit something down there. So I gotta find it here. All right, so now this is standing at the bottom of the stairs inside the dining area. I apologize about the tables. They just rendered a little lower. They're not cocktail tables.
Cocktail tables in a roaster.
They're just, looks like they got the legs cut off. But as we stand and we look up, to the main level, you get a better idea of what those presentation gathering stairs will ultimately become. We do envision those as hardwood material, again, for warmth and durability. It'll be kind of nice. This is that sort of that wood siding textured wall. And then the ceiling, Mr. Berry was mentioning, in the previous 360. Our thoughts here on the ceiling, at least for this portion of the design, is to kind of pick up some of the waves of the lake. And there is a product out there that hopefully we can fit into the budget that'll allow us to kind of honor that and maybe do something a little bit more dramatic with the lights. This is really the center, the hub of your entire school, so we want to make sure that we honor it with what we propose for the design. And we might even take a look at, if it's possible, of continuing some of that material back into the farther reaches of what was formerly your dining space back over here. It's just something that that was our original intent, and because of using this three-dimensional program that I was talking about, we realized that we had a kind of a interference there with some other structures and structural materials. So we're still trying to figure that out, and hopefully by the time we come back next time, that'll be taken care of, and we can bid it out accordingly. Let's take a zip around. Staying down low, there's the storage area, the doors here, and then there's that structural wall that we have to keep in place. You see the countertops over here.
Short tables.
This is access to the work area, the workroom, and some storage that we have on the side. And then this looks back into sort of that new classroom, extra classroom that we have down in the lower level.
And those are folding glass doors, right?
Those are folding glass doors, so once you fold that out, this whole space opens up and becomes a lot more useful for social engagements, board meetings, staff meetings, and the like. And just kind of wrapping us right around here, there's your milk coolers. They're not drawn properly, but that's where they'll be located. This is access to the stair. Remember, we had a stair that we were emergency stair that we were putting into the corner of the building. From the lower level, the garden level, all the way up through what is currently the main office, and then outside. And that brings us back to where we started.
So every time I see those stairs, I think 7th grade boys jumping jumping from one big platform to the next. I mean, other schools have done it, so it must not be prohibitive, but I just envision lots of people not using the stairs and using the rest of it for going up and down. Is that safe? Is that what we expect? Or are we going to try to enforce some kind of rule that says you can't walk on the sitting part? Or
they're very accustomed to that as it comes to getting out of the bleachers and getting out of the front door. Yeah, you make a good point, but it's a matter of instructing the kids on how to use the space. Our kids do a really nice job of moving respectfully through the building. I would imagine that won't be any different in a space like this.
okay, so that's what other schools do. They just make a rule that you don't walk on the other areas, and okay.
What we have found by doing sort of these kinds of one of the main drivers of this entire renovation and additions project is to kind of open up the building so that people can't hide behind walls and there's a lot of glass and transparency, and there's a lot of collaboration and communication between different departments and kids and teachers and all their peers. When you do that, what we have found, and when you do it successfully, we found and we hear about a change in behavior.
I've heard the same
And,
thing. I've heard that too.
Because they're more
Bad behave now.
No, I'm sorry. I'm not. I don't mean to imply that, but yeah, they're still kids, right? So there's actually, instead of an encumbrance, there's a potential opportunity over here as well. If you look at it that way.
Is it just me or is this area seem kind of dark?
Well, that's the rendering. We haven't really put all the lights in. We have some here, but we're not suggesting candlelight. So.
I think it's how it's showing up here as opposed
Yeah,
to.
because it didn't look that way when we saw it.
Is that where the current library
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you kind of take out the second floor of the library, there are windows up there, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are.
Ceiling tiles.
Yeah, there's. I think it's like right up here. There might be some.
So you're going to get some, once that's removed, you're going to get natural light.
Yeah, we're exploring how we could use those to get natural light in from up above. We're also thinking about looking at solar tubes through the roof, but we don't really have much in the way of roof work in an existing building. So it's just something we need to do. If you remember the previous this rendering here, we're getting natural lights built in through the science lab right now. There's a lot of windows in those rooms, so we'll be able to capture some of that. We'll also get some natural light from down below through here.
I just thought there were more windows up high.
Yeah.
where
Yeah.
Do the waves obscure the windows that are up there?
No, because the windows are farther down.
Yeah, they're in different
This
a
space
different
over
place.
here. They're really not up above over here. One of the things we're looking at is seeing if we can get put some lights up above over here.
That would be cool.
In between the waves, just that might help it out a little bit too.
What
we might drop some fixtures down through the waves.
And you found some structural wall in the far end of the waves too that you can't. We were thinking light would come in from the front door there, but there's some structural wall you can't take out there.
Yeah.
When you're downstairs and you're looking up at the wooden stairs going up, what direction are you looking?
You'd be looking east. So you're talking about looking up this way?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's looking straight east.
They're like the bluff.
Yeah.
Right.
That's true.
As if you're looking into the
That's cool.
interior.
I know.
That really
I was
is
thinking the
kinda-
same thing.
I never
We
thought
ought to
about
be
that.
doing in the bluff. We really ought to.
We should make them just as steep as the stairs we used to have down to the lake.
Yeah.
You guys have any other questions about what you've seen? Feedback for Craig?
We still have a long way to go, and it's acknowledged, but this is a week old already. So, we'll see
It's
what
like the
what stuff he's
attendance-
got to me when I get back.
It's like the attendance numbers that Kevin tries to.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm envisioning that this is in a different spot, but where is this currently? In the library? Because the library is 2 stories tall, so.
The library's at this level right here.
Yeah. So
Um,
why?
and
This is downstairs
That's
where we
the
have
art.
classrooms.
I know that, but why are the waves at the 1-story level when it seems like we have another story up there above the waves?
There is not a story above the waves.
Your library has a higher ceiling than your corridor that you're looking at.
Okay, so this is the corridor, not the library. Not
Portion of it.
Over to the
That
right.
tube that you see is the current student lounge that you're accustomed to.
Say that again?
This tube up here that you see is that current
Yeah,
student
yeah.
lounge area outside the cafeteria. The ceilings there are not as high as they are inside of the library.
Yeah.
Nate, you're gonna have to use a microphone if you keep doing this. Sorry.
No, it's all right. I got it.
Just in case if there's nothing. Does that make sense? What you're looking at now?
That's where they put all the kids' pictures
Oh,
for the musical and
I know
stuff.
the chimney, but I'm just having a hard time. So the gym is behind the chimney and to the right?
Yes.
Yes.
Here's the wall.
That's the gym, okay.
Right there, yeah.
So that's the 2 stories where your cursor is right now. It is 2 stories tall, but it's a corridor under the waves.
This is the ceiling. That's the ceiling height.
Okay.
Yeah, the wave ceiling now is currently the ceiling of a hallway with lockers along the sides as you walk from the office to the gym.
Okay. Got it. Now I'm more interested.
And I would tell you, when all the lights were out, because we looked at it with all the lights out, it didn't look dark. I think it looks different in here with the lighting we have in here.
We're all.
I was debating it if we should keep the show.
Can you just give each of us the software for a week to work with, and we'll have some ideas for when we get there.
It's actually a lot. I'm told it's a lot. I'm told it's a lot easier to get now.
We don't know what we're doing. We trust you.
It's very cool.
We'll come back with more materials and colors and lights.
And when's the core team meeting then? What's our next meeting kind of design talk?
The week after next.
Okay, so that comes up soon.
Yeah.
And there'll be a lot of changes then, I'm sure.
Yep.
Anything more you want to cover, Craig, or do we go to the Tom Carano show now?
Tom Carano show.
Tom is from IHC, our construction manager, and he's the guy who keeps us, he's going to keep us on budget one way or another.
Budget non-tip.
A couple things there is the latest budget at the 50% prior drawings. At this point, with the drawings and how they're presented, I've started breaking out what I anticipate to be the different trade packages that I've walked it in and the dollar amounts associated with that. That's kind of a fluid work in progress. As the drawings get more detailed and we get closer to the bid time, we can add bid package, take away bid package, move things around from one to the other. So don't concentrate on each individual trade package. We want to concentrate on the bottom line number and the 9.2 million that we're going to budget to. So this is our second work in progress. Some of the things you saw today, we still have to take a look at from a pricing standpoint and how that fits in with the budget, and we'll continuously update this and report back to you. The other item is the schedule, and Dr. Sophie had mentioned some special board meetings. We've developed our bid schedule, 3 group packages, 1 group going out in December, bidding in January, another one going out in January, bidding in February, and the last one going out at the end of February and bidding at the late March. So there's 3 special board meetings.
Do you mean awarded in late March?
What's that?
You're saying bidding in late March? Do you mean
Yep.
awarded?
Bidding in late March and then approved at a April board meeting. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The last group will be kind of finishes, probably flooring, casework, things like that. The first group will be excavation, steel, concrete, site work, things like that. Group 2 will have some curtain wall masonry and a few other items as well. So, but there's 3 dates that I've put down there that we want to try and shoot for to maybe get a special board meeting to get those approved at. The first one being January 19th, then one February 29th, and the last one on April 4th.
We can work around those dates though, right?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's not something we need to etch in stone tonight, but I just want to give everyone an idea what we're kind of shooting for.
I'll look at our schedule and work with you on it.
If it's something we need to adjust one way or another for a few days here and there, that's fine. I just didn't want to bring it to everyone's attention. And again, we're looking to start mobilizing in February, getting the trailer out there, getting fence, getting things set up, and begin excavation in March 1st. So that's all I have. If you have any questions,
I didn't catch that.
Yeah.
I just want to point out to the board a little bit more detail on here, and maybe I'll just go ahead and you correct me when I screw up.
That's fine.
We talked about the total package. We've got about $9.3 million to spend, right? And according to Tom's first cut at the numbers, Everything on the bottom of this page is not currently 100% guaranteed to be in the final project. We have included a contingency in the top part of $664,000, which allows us to cover unexpected things and cost changes. And perhaps, if not a lot of things materialize that were unexpected, some of these things on the bottom. So this is the reason we asked you guys to make sure you walk through the school field, because that is on the list on the
Grade,
bottom.
fill, open site, is that what that is?
Yeah. We've got to decide
Wow.
the future for that.
Wow.
And that's
We don't
A
know,
lot of money.
that's a
we
very
don't know
important-
the extent though we have to do yet on that. So that's why we want, they're analyzing soil samples.
And one of the things that we were planning on doing is bidding those items out as an alternate, so that the board knows what it is and can make that decision at that time.
Right.
There might be other items though too that we're gonna bring back to you. We wanna give you as much choice as possible before you go out to bid, and leeway, because we don't know at the time that, what happens in the world. Something can go up, something can bottom out. You have more choices to pick from as far as materials go and other items that we haven't put our heads together on this one. There'll be, hopefully, a number of them for you to pick from.
And this is a first cut, or 50% cut at the 50% progress. And so it's a work in progress, but I just want to bring to your attention that we are still wrestling. We're going to be wrestling with some of this other stuff.
And my understanding of the numbers is every time we refine a drawing and get further into plans, you guys do your thing.
Yeah, when Craig comes up with another updated set, I work on another budget just to see if there's particular areas that good, bad, or indifferent that we need to look at.
And your job is gonna get them down, right, Tom?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Keep hammering those architects.
Yes.
Does anybody have anybody have any questions for Tom or Craig?
Thank you both.
Comments or questions about any of this stuff?
Just a reminder, the next meeting, official meeting we'll have is November 17th at the school. So we can actually walk and look in the hallways. I think that'll be advantageous for
But it'll
everyone.
be too dark to walk the field, so that's why we asked you to walk the field beforehand.
For sure.
Okay, so you guys are done. Thank you very much. Great
Thank
job.
you, thank you.
Item 10, FOIA request. We did not have any FOIA requests unless something happened today.
No FOIA.
Okay, and then a second opportunity for public comment. If anybody in the audience would like to address the board, please do so now. If nobody would like to do that, we'll move along and ask might I have a motion to adjourn at 9:08 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.